But there was this traditional like kind of thing coming back around that guys were riding like longboards, I think, in my opinion, in a way that was really appealing to me.
Hey guys, and aloha. It's Mark Sawyer-Chu.
And AJ Ellerington.
Together we'll be hosting the Christian Surfers Podcast,
where we talk Jesus
and talk with surfers that love Jesus.
Tune in to hear some amazing stories.
Yeah, JJ.
Good.
In the house, buddy.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. Really stoked to be here. Thanks for being in my board shed. Sorry, my house.
Dude, this is the coolest board shed I've ever been in. Dude.
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for the compliment. It's I cleaned it up just for your arrival. Honestly, it was packed. Folks.
I gotta take a photo of this afterwards and send it to the editors and show them how cool this is, how creative this is, and the little workshop space, and it's nice and cozy. We're sitting right next to each other.
It's tight.
I love it. It's okay, dude. I love it. We just met, and I love you, man. I feel like we've
like we've known each other forever, and almost like kind of like, whoa, what's that? How do you know this guy, that guy, and that part of it.
Many friends in common.
Yeah, many friends in common. I think sometimes that's what the Lord does. You know, like as often you're on a highway, maybe just the same highway, but just different lanes. You know.
Yeah. Small world.
And the small world thing often comes up, especially when you start talking about like the common ground, right, of surfing and the Lord, Jesus, and the center of just and where the Lord has us, right? Like even you being distant now in Florida, but like just the fact that you know so many people here, it's almost like this is a second home to you, or has been at some point in your life.
Thanks for making me feel at home.
Yeah, thanks for coming here. I'm stoked.
I always say that. You don't need Kevin Bacon in surfing. You just need Jesus because he knows everyone. With literally 1 degree of separation instead of 6. But JJ, welcome to the Christian Surfers Talk Story Podcast, where we talk about Jesus and talk to people that love Jesus, such as yourself. And thank you for having me at your house in the middle of all the construction. You just walked me through it, and it's a beautiful home.
Thank you.
Little secret spot here in San Juan Cap, and you got a lot going on in your life.
Yeah, super blessed. I think the Lord's been so faithful through it all, and like I often think of that when you go through various trials. You know, like those things produce patience, and you know, like just trying to find that joy in the Lord, like through these things. You know, as you you get through those challenges and you see the obstacles that you face. It's nice to have a house, you know, and you can kind of look at it that way. It's like, I'm so grateful to have a home.
Especially in Southern California.
That's what I mean, and to live here and to have grown up here and to be able to walk to my parents' house and walk to my in-laws' house and have their support, their love, and you know, and even just having my son, you know, grow up in this place and like really have spent so much time at the beach, and to be raising him in that way. I didn't grow up that way. So for me, it's just been a huge blessing and privilege. And my prayer is that the Lord will use my son in mighty ways. And I always pray for his character. It's often something that comes to my mind as he's developing. He's only three and a half. So I feel like, you know, we're just kind of getting words and, you know, still in that phase of like understanding his emotions. And, it's just amazing to see when you go through these things, the way you react, how they are such sponges, you know? Like your kids are just like,
especially at that age,
aware of everything. And at this age, it's like, oh, we had to move out of our house because we've had a big mold issue. And now we're remediating that problem. But like at first he was so nervous and overwhelmed. And now he's like, oh, the workers are at the house. And he's like kind of absorbing different aspects of it and seeing things through his eyes. Has kind of brought joy. Like we have a trampoline in the front yard, and we come over and we'll jump on the trampoline, and I'll check on some things and do some stuff, and we try to like kind of make it fun, you know. Yeah. And like when you try to bring light and joy into things and make fun of things, it's part of I think what the joy of surfing is, right? It's like really it's more happiness than joy, but it's one of those things that's fulfilling in that sense of it. It's always fun. I mean, almost every time I've ever surfed, I've had a good time, especially in that first interim 30 minutes. If you haven't surfed, even if it's blown out and windy, you get in the water and you catch a couple waves, you're kind of like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
It's like, it's sometimes when you overextend that or you have higher expectations is where you start kind of feeling like, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But I always feel like that's like that kind of making light of it is something that really has always been for me, like the blessing that the Lord's given us, like to know and to feel like that's part of who we are, you know?
Surfing is definitely a gift, and God has given us that, and to be able to kind of go surfing and come back a better person, almost reset out there. It's definitely a spiritual thing, and you're an amazing dad, and you're an amazing husband, and I could already tell. But to take a step back, kind of like what we just had dinner. We went out to an awesome barbecue place, a family that goes to your church, Bad to the Bone. Yeah. Amazing barbecue in San Juan Cap. If you're ever in the area, check it out. Yeah. And we just ran into some other friends there, and I felt like we were just talking. Like, I feel like we could talk all night.
Yeah, just totally run into like Pat Stacy and like just I don't know, it's just cool to like run into these guys in ways. It's just like really natural. Like I was sharing with you, it's like living here, and really absorbing kind of that community and that basis of just like, just I think that's why the Lord has this in parts of the communities that we're in, and even if you're in Florida, you're still part of that greater surf community. Yeah, and
the tribe.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's something that like I've learned is even traveling to different regions and different areas all over the globe. There's like little like micro like cultures, I guess, that like are really unique and in the same. Like it's almost like you have more in common than you realize. And when you go there, you're like, oh wow, like you guys are into the same things and we're inspired by the same things or like the same kind of boards or same kind of waves, and that's what's so cool about, I think, like the current place we're in surfing. It's like I feel like it's kind of gone through these transitional eras, and we're living in a time where it's all married together, and what's advancing forward is a bit of ride everything and kind of just enjoy what's given. The right tool for the right job. Like the waves are small, this is a good board. The waves are big, that's a good board. Yeah. And to approach it that way, like I think approaching life like that, the same. It's like just kind of really praying for the right perspective. Like I've been praying so much for the right reaction to things. Just having the right reaction to the circumstance you're facing, and really understanding even just the body's natural reaction to things. Where it's like if you get sick, I always thought a cough was a bad thing. Yeah. But really, like a cough is the way your body gets the stuff out that's in it. Yeah. And it's like, natural. That makes sense. Like, but I always thought like, I've got a cough, I must be sick. Right. Or I've got a fever. Well, is a fever bad? Well, yeah, a fever could be bad for a long time, but sometimes fever is the way the body reacts naturally to its defense, to like warm up and get rid of the virus that you have. Yeah. Attacking
all intelligent design.
But
God the Father.
Totally. And the Lord is just so like, He is our physician, and I've just learned so much in like just my walk of like realizing I know very little. Yeah. And I think like, I don't know, just being a humble man, the Lord's humbled me so much, and just
constantly learning.
Yeah, and even just like thinking the things I think or know, I really don't. It's just anything with surfing. It's like, I got this figured out, and then you catch a wave and fall over. You're like, no, I really don't. That's what's so cool about it, right?
Yeah, and that's why we need Jesus. And I love that character aspect of you, and I love how you're so into so many different things. Your family now you've got this art. You're doing this 3D printing thing. You're shaping boards. You're renovating your house. You're still an athlete. You're surfing for some great brands, Uppercut, Chris Christensen, Rain. Yeah. You've surfed for Hurley and Maddox, and just as we were talking about earlier, so many other mutual friends. Sure. And consulting for different brands. How did you get into surfing, and did you grow up in the faith?
No, so my parents weren't Christians. My dad grew up in a broken home. My grandmother was like kind of like so my grandparents moved here in 1959 from Holland, and they came over from Europe, and they basically moved here because my grandfather had an aunt that lived here. And so that when they came over, they barely spoke English. They started going to a Dutch Reformed church in LA. And their extended family, brothers on my grandmother's side, moved over, kind of followed my grandparents here. And they were just a tight pack, and they lived in like I think South Central or something, my dad said. So he was the firstborn in the U.S. in 1959. And then he had 3 siblings, a sister and 2 brothers. And they were all very tight, but the youngest brother, the family was kind of like the youngest. He was far enough in age away from my dad that they weren't like as close, but still, like, they all were South Bay family. He met my mom in the South Bay, like up in LA, and they got together, and then, you know, my mom got pregnant, and then they basically got married kind of in that phase of just, you know, hey, we're having a baby. And so I was born the same year they were married, 1984, and then they moved from Torrance over to Norco.
Okay.
I was 1. So Dad grew up, I think, South Central zone, and they moved to the South Bay, and then kind of most of his childhood was in the South Bay.
Yeah.
And then he moved with my mom to Norco because the rent was cheaper, and my mom's mom had divorced and moved to Norco. She became a horse person, and so they kind of followed my mom's mom to Norco. So I lived there until I was in 5th grade, so that 9 or 10, something like that. And then my parents separated, and I moved in with my grandma, the one in Norco, and she was a very strict Catholic, wonderful woman. She taught me all my manners, was like, put me in basketball. Like, you know, I kind of grew up in, like I said, a very broken home, in the sense of just my parents were, you know, they didn't really know the Lord at all, and they were pretty into drugs and drinking and different things. And and so there was just a lot of craziness in my youth. And so that early phase for me, I didn't know the Lord at all, but my dad left. My mom kind of gave me over to my grandma at one point, and so so I ended up living with my grandma, and then my dad kind of got saved.
Dream with me, what if every surfer had access to a surf-friendly church?
I sensed there was this wave coming. I kept bumping into Christian surfers people that were planting or involved in Sandy Feet Friendly Church.
But in those places where there is no church, somebody has to step in, and we're answering that call.
This is what's wonderful about pioneering something new. It's what's wonderful about starting a church where there aren't any other Christians. Because I can't do a big flyer run. I don't have any of those options. The only way our church is going to grow is with people getting saved. God's got to turn up and start saving some people. That's his job. All I got to do is just be truthful to who he is, follow him. But he's kind of in the business of turning up and showing off. That's what God loves to do. He's the I am.
And my grandmother that was in Norco reached out to my grandmother that lived here in San Juan, and basically they negotiated and had my dad come pick me up. So I moved here to San Juan when I was in 5th grade, and I moved in with my grandma and my dad. And I had a cousin, a second cousin, who lived up in Los Osos, and she was living with my grandmother as well. And she was getting sober as well, and kind of like she was a senior in high school. So my dad basically hired her to babysit me that summer. So it was like 5th, 6th grade summer. I think it was 6th grade summer that she babysat me, and she was into the beach. She got really into bodyboarding. So she took me to the beach like every day. That was like pretty much like how I started going to the beach a bunch. My dad surfed when he lived in the South Bay.
In Torrance.
Redondo, Breakwater and stuff.
The avenues.
So, yeah, the avenues. Yeah, totally. Rats Beach, yeah. And a little bit of like the Dominator and kind of that, you know, Haggerty Zone, PV and stuff. So he grew up surfing, but like didn't really get re-engaged until we moved to San Juan, and then he started surfing again, and I was riding boogie boards because of my cousin. Went to like T Street a bunch, and then by like 6th and 7th grade I started going to middle school, and I tried out for the surf team and was like a bodyboarder on the surf team, and kind of got into it then. Like just went to but then we kind of had this little community here in San Juan. All these kids, like, it was back when like there was Bodyboarding magazine, and it was like the coolest thing to me. I was like, wow, this is rad. I don't know how I got into that. Like, started doing like Laguna days. There's this wave called 10th Street. It had a little wedge, kind of like a mini wedge. We'd go there and bodyboard, and so that was like 7th, 8th grade, and then freshman summer, 8th grade summer, my dad wanted me to play football. I never wanted to really play football, but he's like, hey, why don't you play football? So I started playing football. I did Hell Week, and it was like the worst week of my life. Just like running, dead.
Hence the name, I guess.
It was super just gnarly. And so every day after practice, I was like, I gotta go to the beach. And so we started going to Pochi. And back then, Pochi had this reef that would like break, and it would break all the way ashore, and it was like this really mushy, slow wave, and you couldn't really bodyboard it. It was like, it's literally like going to Old Man's, but
too fat and slow.
It's just super slow. And so my dad got this longboard from Danny Bronner randomly, like he bought it, and it was this old like D-fin. It was actually like, and now I would probably have really liked to have that board, but I thought nothing of it then, and it was like a board that we ended up, I think, breaking. Like I ran into the sand and broke, but that was like the kind of the first board I started surfing on. And then he had a Rick Stinger that he had from when he lived in the South Bay when he was a kid. And once I started getting the surf bug, like I got on that board, we broke it, and then I got on that Stinger, and I was just like, oh, this is so fun. And then the board hit me in the head, and I kind of had this setback of like, ooh, this is like a contact sport. I'm not that into this hard object. And I was like a freshman, and I was kind of like, eh. And then once freshman year started, I started playing football. I played quarterback, and I like started half the games. Actually my freshman season, I played quarterback the whole season and played I think all the games. There's 10 games, so I had a game every week. I needed to know like all the plays, and I was left-handed, so we kind of ran the ball a lot, but I threw some, and so I kind of had to know what to do. And then by the end of that summer, I was pretty over it, because I was like, by the end of that year, I should say, by the next summer, so my freshman summer, I was like, I don't know if I want to play quarterback. Then we got a new coach, and then basically like my play time split in half because the coach's son played quarterback too. So it was like a little political, and it was a little bit like I was already getting over it. And then I sat through my sophomore season, played, but I was also kind of like in this phase of starting to get more into surfing, and that was like the year, so that was like 2000. So that was right around the time where like the Seedling, the movie The Seedling, I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Is that Thomas Campbell?
Yeah, it's Thomas Campbell's film, like was kind of like being made. And Thomas grew up here in Dana Point, and like he would film, and I'd see him at certain spots, and I was starting to surf, and I was kind of like, wow, it was really cool to see those guys kind of bringing back traditional longboarding. And like Devin Howard was over at Longboard Magazine, that was in San Clemente, and there's some of the kids at San Clemente High School. There's this guy Jeremy King who worked there, and he rode for Hap Jacobs. And so San Clemente High School really at that time had like an amazing surf team, but also very like nourished like longboard scene. Like there's Sano, and there was a lot of guys that had
diversity in culture. It wasn't just shortboarding.
It was like, but there was this traditional like kind of thing coming back around that guys were riding like longboards, I think, in my opinion, in a way that was really appealing to me, where I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I think maybe starting on that D-fin, like that board that Danny Bronner had repaired and it broke, and like there was just something there. Like I said, I've always liked old things. I was telling you that at dinner, but like there was just something about...
You appreciate the vintage.
Yeah, there was just something about that culture of like, you know, I've always thought this, like if you look at the outlines of old shapes, you know, like in the eras of like the, I don't know, Skip Fry's boards or different things like that, the outlines are there, just the rockers weren't.
Gotcha.
In the early days, they didn't have the ability to like...
They were just super flat.
Yeah, they were just, the molds were, you know, like Hobie Alter making like the first mold with Clark foam, like they were just like flat, big, thick things, and they would shape stuff out of it, but you couldn't really get any consistency, and you didn't really know what rocker to use. And that's like one of the premier advantages to, I think, shaping today, is a guy could say like, oh, I need a 9/8 Y, and it's like, here it is, you know, and then you can build off of that. So like the natural contour is kind of already built into the blank.
Yeah.
And so then you just basically draw your outline. And I think the best longboards today are longboards based off of designs that existed in the past, but didn't have the rockers.
Right.
And so, like, I think the modernization of the culture of longboarding really has always still paid homage to the early days of surfing, and the culture of early shapers. And so it's really cool to see that progression actually happen. Especially, I think there was like a reset from, like, there was really like the Joel Tudor era, and like his peers, Jimmy Gamboa and like CJ Nelson and Mitch Absher, and like there was a group of guys in that age group that really like were kind of a part of that Seedling kind of launch. Dane Peterson, there's just like the cast of the Seedling was like a very special group of people.
Very pivotal moment.
It was a very pivotal moment for the longboard culture, but it was like almost like Bruce Brown's Endless Summer.
Okay.
Like if you were to say like,
just iconic.
It was iconic, and it had this spirit. It was kind of funny, and it kind of had this like really cool culture to it that really inspired me. So I was like, oh, I want to be a longboarder.
And that was mid-90s?
No, that was like, that was like 2001 or 2002. I started high school in 2000. I graduated, in 98, and then graduated in 2002. And like about 2000, the film was being made. I think it came out like 01 or something like that. And I remember seeing the movie, and I was like, wow, that was really cool. But I'd also seen like a really, even guys that didn't make the cut into the film that were very good surfers, that I was like, whoa, like just the likeness of those people, and like the fact that they grew up and lived in the community that I was becoming more and more a part of. Growing up in San Juan, like I said, I was a boogie boarder. I went to Marco Forster Middle School, and a lot of my friends that went to Marco Forster went on to Dana Hills, so they became Dana Point kids. And where I lived in San Juan, we didn't have a high school here, so we had the choice. We could go to Dana Hills, we could go to Capo Valley, or we could go to San Clemente.
Wow.
And I chose to go to San Clemente, and my neighbors went to San Clemente. Like Nate Yeomans lived around the corner, and my neighbor directly across the street from me, this guy Gabe, who really became passionate about longboarding at the same time I did, and almost like was a big brother. He was 2 grades above me, so he drove me to school. And I got influenced by this generation that was inspired by Seedling, inspired me. But what was really cool was like there was a lot of people that not necessarily were even in that film, but like participated in, kind of one way or another. Either they were filmed by Thomas Campbell, or they were around filming, or they shot some photos, or that creative element was very like intertwined into that whole film. Like the whole culture kind of embraced it at that time. Yeah. And it like sparked the birth of the generation I'm a part of. Right. The Alex Nuss, the Tyler Warrens, Robbie Kegel, like my generation of friends that live around here.
Yeah. Cameron Brown.
Yeah, Cameron Brown. Cameron was a little younger, him and Christian Walk. Christian Walk was like, he was like 9-10, but like really longboarded really, really well when he was a kid. He was like, like a Joel Tudor, like early Joel Tudor stuff. Like his first movie was filmed by this guy, Steve Cleveland. It was called On Safari to Stay, I think. And Joel was like a prodigy, right? Like Christian Walk was that same prodigy in like my generation, so to speak. Great surfer. Cameron Brown too, really great surfer. But I think a lot of those kids were, kind of influenced by like the generation I'm a part of. Yeah. Which was really cool. Like, and then the fact that some of those guys, Christian Walk, his name's Christian Walk, like he grew up in a Christian home and like the Christian parents, and I don't know, like, I don't know where his relationship is with the Lord, but it's like some of those guys like had a very different foundation than I did, and also everyone's had different trials and tribulations they've gone through and had to make choices, and we're always presented with those things. But it was really interested and intertwined and threaded through the passion I developed for something I just fell in love with, and I've realized what that love is manifested into is just the Lord's like really given me this perspective of like, man, I feel like it's part of what I want to do with my life and people I want to be around, and those sort of things like came naturally, I guess is what I'm saying, and it progressed from like kind of where I've grown up now, because I've spent the better half of my life here now,
The South OC is almost like the epicenter of the surfing world and culture.
I always
now.
tell my in-laws, because they're not surfers, or my grandparents or people, I'm always like, yeah, like it is like one of the, you know, kind of hubs of the culture.
Absolutely.
Arguably. I mean, there's a lot of places in the world that this thing is burning me. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places in the world that have a surf culture, and that's very
North
rich.
Shore.
North Shore.
Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii. There's East Coast places. Florida has a surf culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Canada. There's like a young surf culture there now. Tofino, the East Coast. Nova Scotia has a really cool surf scene.
Yeah.
It's localized, but it's really like genuine. Like a lot of the community there's a lot of women that surf, which is really cool to see. There's a couple named the Manioses. It's like Jill and her husband Nico, and they have a surf shop called Lawrencetown Surf, and
cool.
They're just really. She's a great longboarder. Was a prolific shortboarder, still is, and it's kind of like turned his ear a little bit more to longboarding now. But their shop is genuinely a board shop, and there's a guy from Maine that moved up there named Dean Petty, who's a really good surfer. And so there's like communities, these little pockets of places that have such cool roots. But it's really interesting how California, or our culture, or my peers have impacted these places.
Super cool.
Yeah, it's super cool, and like I think
now, like the younger generation, Corey Colapinto and those guys,
totally
coming up.
Yeah, I mean, and it's what's so cool about a guy like Corey is like he grew up surfing lowers, and I remember seeing him as a shortboarder, and I remember like seeing him ride Ryan Birch's boards. Like one season, he was like kind of locking into these like kind of asymmetrical, like different alternative boards, and like. He's a really gifted. God's blessed that kid so much. And I was just watching him ride these boards that Birch made that he was just like ripping on, and I was like, wow, like I don't care if you're a shortboarder, longboarder, whatever, like that was very inspiring surfing. And he was riding them at Sano, and he'd ride them at lowers, and then like what was really cool was he was like so stoked because it was all so new to him.
Right.
And I think that Birch board like really like opened his eyes to like these alternative ideas and shapes. Yeah. And now he's like kind of like matured into doing a lot of different things. Like he makes these really, really thin boards that are like an inch thick and like like crazy like twin fins, and it's funny, he's gotten into things like it's a little Herbie Fletcher inspired, and I always goof about it because for me like I've become more and more upright as I've been recovering from my injuries and things. I can't bend down like I used to and stuff, so I'm always looking for boards that don't do the things that Corey's trying to do. Right. You know, like I want my board to like like not even the vertical so much, it's more like the sliding and the slipping. Yeah. Corey's really engaged in like boards that like go fast. Yeah. And there's like this, cross step he does that's really, it's influenced by longboarding, but it's also like he's riding a board that maybe like a 7-foot twin fin, so a cross step doesn't necessarily make sense, but he's made it like into his own thing, and he loves that like get to the nose and let the fin slide and then kind of pull it off, and he's doing different style. Things, and like it's all about having fun. So it is really fun to watch, but it's funny because I tease him about it. I'm like, dude, I don't want my boards to do that. Like I want the fin to like set a line and engage. Stay engaged, and so that way I can stand on the nose and the board doesn't slide. Like to me, the boards in my mind, I'm like, that's a board. That's not a good board. Your board's sliding. Like I don't want it to do that. Yeah. And then he'd probably ride what I ride and be like, man, this board doesn't move. Go fast. Yeah.
I'm Shannon Ainsley, a double shark attack survivor. And for the last 13 years, I've worked on a biography which tracks my life. So this book includes my upbringing in post-apartheid South Africa and how I kind of struggled mentally and emotionally through depression and suicidal thoughts, and then how my shark attack was the turning point in my life, and where I had this crazy, amazing God encounter where he protected me and saved me and rescued me from my mental and emotional problems. And then from there, how I was able to use surfing and surf coaching as a tool to try and make a difference in other people's lives. So if you're interested in some great stories, get a copy of this book. You can find it as an ebook or as a paperback cover through Amazon and some other platforms like BookBaby and also Take-A-Lot. And so hang on, that was Rock, not BookBaby. Wasn't on BookBaby. Okay, one more time. Here comes your dad, hang on.
Shannon? Shannon, is that really you? Mate, I have got a copy of your book. And I heard you were here and I wondered whether you'd sign it for me. Because, you know, I mean, I love your story and this book is amazing. It's like the best book I've ever read. I mean, there's the Bible and then there's this. Well, no, there's this and then there's the Bible. But you know what I'm saying, man? This is incredible. Would you sign it for me? Would you?
Easy, why not, man?
Would you do it? Anything
for a good friend, eh?
Just if you just write the message, Richard, you're the best surfer in Christian surfers.
Okay.
In Christian surfers, you're better than Roy Harley.
Christian surfers?
Yes.
You're better than
Roy Harley.
Who's that?
Roy Harley's just this incidental dude who drops it on me every once in a while.
Okay. Better than Roy Harley.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, it's very like subjective and like it's a tool for the trade. And like I've watched him, you know, progress and enjoy surfing in ways that that part of it is so like genuine and real. And like there's so many days that we're both, you know, he likes to go lefty's goofy foot, but we're both at the beach and I can see his wife filming. And my wife's on the beach filming, and we've got the wives' cams going, and then like we're calling each other, and we're like, "Dude, that was so fun!" And he's surfing just down the way, and then there's times we've totally surfed together lately, and like
that's rad.
It's so rad to share that with that generation. And Corey is part of such a rich, prolific surf family. Like his cousins are Griffin and Crosby.
Just won Portugal.
He's also Griffin won Portugal today. Yeah. But then like he's also related to Mitch Absher.
Wow.
Like Mitch is his second cousin. And then there's this other kid, Dodge, who lives here in San Juan. Who's a really good surfer that a lot of people don't know. That's a cousin of his. So I'm like, sheesh, man, the Colapentos are like
Spanish or
kind of royalty in this area in a way. And their dad has influenced the Hennings. I don't know if you know, like Dave Hennings, the Shore Cliffs middle school teacher, but he got into teaching because of the fact that Corey's dad's a teacher, Mitch is a teacher. And so even influencing people's career paths to be surfers, because like David is a really good surfer, a good skateboarder, and teaches the surf team at Shore Cliffs, but he also teaches Spanish. So like during his off season, he does like tours to Mexico with kids, and he does like surf trips. And he's a really dynamic guy.
Immersion,
yeah, totally. Like he immerses his students in the culture, but he takes them like on surf trips and skate trips, and I think it impacts those kids in a really, really rad way. Like I would have loved to have a Spanish teacher like that. You know,
super rad to hear that. We had Corey on the podcast a few months back. Corey, we love you. He's doing his own tracks now. He's out street evangelizing at the Dana Point Harbor every other day with his wife. And you basically gave us a good surfing 101 history here with JJ Wessles. He's our encyclopedia of surfing. Matt, the Christian surfers, Matt Warsaw. What about faith for you, though? Because like I was talking about earlier, we've been in probably the same room a million times, never officially met, have a ton of mutual friends and contacts. I always heard your name, always heard that you were a Jesus follower and believer, but how did you kind of come to know Jesus?
Yeah, so like early for me, like a big part of my testimony was the transformation of my father, you know, so growing up and having a broken home, my parents separating, and then my parents ended up back together. But my dad came to the Lord when he moved here to San Juan, and my grandmother was kind of like that spearhead of the faith for my family. And she told my dad, she's like, hey, if you're going to move here and live with me, you got to go to church, and you've got to get sober. You've got to start going through like AA and NA and all that sort of thing. My dad did all of that, but he really developed a relationship with Jesus, and that was like something that when I came back into his life, I really like valued. I mean, he became such a great father. He was always a pretty good dad, but like when he came to know the Lord, it was different. It was like he wanted to hang with me, he wanted to do stuff, he wanted to take me to the beach, he wanted me to play football, he wanted to come to my games. Like he was very, I'm an only child, so I was just like very spoiled to have a dad that was very plugged into my life. But then when I started getting into surfing, he kind of fed that. You know, he provided boards. He employed my dad's cousin to take me to the beach. Like, he was always at the beach with me. I started doing, when I really started getting into it, like junior, senior year, like he let me go to Scorpion Bay when I was 16.
Wow.
Like literally I turned 16 and I think like 5 days later I got to go down there. It was crazy. Like I just got my license, and my neighbor across the street, him and I like built this little rack in the back of a single cab Toyota truck, and we drove down. And my dad loved the Lord and he had faith. He trusted the Lord in a way that he gave me a lot of freedom. And for me, my personality has always been that, where it's like, if people put me in parameters and told me what to do, I probably would have went the other direction. But my dad said, hey, I don't really, I'm giving you the freedom, like, to choose. All of these things have consequence. Look at my life.
Yeah.
Look at the things I've gone through. These are struggles. These are mistakes I've made. But like, if I want to give you the opportunity to make that choice. I'm not going to restrict you from it. And because of my character, that really like made me feel like I didn't want to do those things. Like I never drank. I just really felt like the Lord kept me from that in a way, because I was protected, because I saw what drinking did in my home.
Right.
And so fortunately I like was able to kind of see it from that light. But what was really like, I think, profound in my faith when I started to kind of really develop a personal relationship with the Lord was like, when I started going through the trials in my own life, that like kind of defined my relationship with the Lord and having to depend on Him. When my dad started getting sick, he got diagnosed with dementia when he was 51, and he was still pretty young. I married my wife when I was 26. We had dated for 7 years, and my dad got sick, and that element of that relationship I had with my dad had changed. I started kind of leaving and cleaving, hanging with my wife all the time, and we were like kind of inseparable. And then her dad had a brain injury, and my dad got sick. So we both kind of had these significant changes in our lives. And her dad, went through a recovery process. My dad's gradually started getting worse. And I felt like in my relationship with the Lord, as that dependent and that like grandfather relationship for me started to change, because I always felt like I was a grandchild through my dad. Like people would be like, what's your testimony? And I'd talk about my dad for an hour and then really have nothing to say. Felt like for me it was my dad getting sick, and then I got in a plane crash in 2017,
right,
and
almost died,
and like those things took place and really defined my dependence on Christ, and like really defined my desire and my understanding and interpretation of what really mattered in my walk with the Lord. Because I felt like in high school, through my dad, I gave my life to the Lord. I got saved when I was 12. But I went to youth group, but it was like more of a social environment. And I think I struggled with like a personal relationship with the Lord, in the sense of just, I felt like I went to youth group to hang out with people. It wasn't like I was trying to like really, really like understand what the Lord had for me in my life, or even understand how much like I could benefit from spending time with Him. Yeah. And I kind of just was so young, I think, in my faith, that I was ignorant to a lot of things and got caught up in things that I didn't even know were wrong. Like I didn't really have a biblical foundation. Yeah. So like for me, early on in my faith, I was like given a lot of freedom, but I also didn't really know like biblical stories. I didn't know anything about the Bible or like creation or the idea of those sorts of things. And I kind of, I look back at that and I'm like, wow, the Lord really like matured me in my relationship with my wife. And then, like I said, the plane crash, but also like when I started dating my wife, she had gone to Christian school her whole life and grew up in a very conservative home. And, she was graduating high school when we were dating, and she was thinking about going on to college. So she was going to go to a Bible college. And I was like, oh man, I was so into our relationship and loved her even at that phase of my life that I was like, I really wish she'd stay. And so I talked her into going to a satellite campus through the Calvary Chapel Bible College. And then I joined her for a class, and I really liked it. And so then I started taking her to school, and I started going to the classes that she was in. And then I signed up for a few, and I ended up like spending 4 years there. And
at Bible college?
Yeah, I graduated with an associate's degree in theology. So I started to like develop a personal relationship with the Lord, but I hadn't really been through any trials until the plane crash.
Yeah.
And once that happened for me, it was
It's a
like
pretty big trial.
it was just like a dividing line of like, okay, I'm all in for the Lord, and I want to like really commit my life to Christ and really spend every minute I can with Him and like learn more about
second chance at life.
Yeah,
right?
it was a second chance at life, but there's just like also a whole layer to like just the relationships I have. Like I see people from that lens. Like when you go through things, like the Lord really gives you like perspective. Like if you've had a child as a parent, you're like, I always used to think, they always used to say that old adage, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And once you have kids, you realize there's no way the egg could come first because, like, literally the egg would kill itself, right? Like, kids 1, 2, and 3 are, like, pretty suicidal, and you've got to, like,
your job in those first years is to protect them from
There's no way they're going to live, right?
You're like, just sticking the finger in the light socket.
Totally, you turn your back and they're climbing a wall or something, and you're like, well, okay, like, now I know the answer to this, but like, you can like, really see that in, like, a lot of young parents, right? Like, you guys, everybody, like, looks at each other like, whoa, this is way gnarlier than I thought. But you don't know that until you're a parent. And even if you tell someone that doesn't have kids, it's so different having your own child. It's like, I always thought, oh, my kid's not going to be the kid that watches the phone or goes on the iPad or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, wait till you have kids, that'll change. Like, if you have a phone, he's going to touch it at one point, you know, and she's
like, grab it.
Yeah, totally. And there's like a certain level of that you have to like accept as kind of the reality of the scope of where we live and how we live in this time we're living in. And, when you embrace those things, you start to see like how the Lord can work through those things. Like even doing a podcast like this, I'm like, it's so cool to like be able to like speak to people you've never met and like let the Lord like lead. Maybe it turns into a friendship. I don't really know what God's...
Or to hear your story, whereas otherwise they wouldn't have had. You've been on the Right Nature podcast, a Seeger podcast.
Yeah.
Pastor John Randall's, right, at South...
it's Calvary South OC.
That's where you're going to church now.
Yeah, we've been going there. Yeah, like
great church.
Yeah, when Pastor Chuck Smith passed away, so we went to his church in Costa Mesa.
The big one.
He was the founder of Calvary. And then he passed.
Jesus Revolution.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen that movie, Jesus Revolution.
Great movie.
It's his story. And it was so cool is he was like a pastor that surfed. And a lot of the Calvary Chapel pastors were surfers. And so it's really cool. It's like, to me, that's like such a common thread within Calvary Chapel is there's Ricky Ryan who surfed. There's Greg Laurie who surfed. There's Bob Coy. There's like all these guys that were surfers. And like still love the ocean, and there's a guy Mike Jonkhurst who works for Harvest up in Irvine. He's part of their satellite campus. Harvest is like Greg Laurie's church, great church.
Planted out of Calvary.
Planted out of Calvary, and he's an avid surfer, and it's just cool to know these people and like really see where the Lord is working in our community, because surfing's like outside of it's just like anything, outside of like the relationship with the Lord. It's like really all of these things have
lifestyle
kind of snares, there's a lifestyle to it, but there's also like there's certain things where it can become like become your idolatry. And it's like it's like I think for me as a surfer, I was so passionate about it, and I still am. There's a lot of times where I always just like I come to the Lord often about like what He has for me. Like, especially now having a son, it's like I want to like spend as much time with him as I can, so that way like he really like is raised in a way that he has like a real understanding of who the Lord is through example. But like when you're surfing and he's on the beach, it's like, well, I've been out here 3 hours and I just missed 3 hours of his life, So it's kind of that like balance of like, well, am I doing this because it's what I do for a living, or where does it go? So anyways, my faith really has grown exponentially through these trials and tribulations, but also through a relationship, a personal relationship with the Word. And I'm not a reader. Like I really struggle with reading, and so I've learned a lot from like listening to like Bible on tape. A lot of like audio, like Bible studies and messages from different pastors that I've gleaned from. remember being in Bible college and taking courses on certain books and just listening to those chapters from pastors and then reading the chapter and then like kind of getting a bit of all of it because it was hard for me to retain what I was reading. I've always been kind of like this, had like dyslexia in the sense of just the way I interpret things. Like words don't look, I don't have to read it a few times. Once it gets in, I retain it.
Yeah.
But it's like there's this wall sometimes for certain things. And that's one of the things I could say I get frustrated about because I just can't read fast enough.
Right.
And so like for me, like the Lord I always felt like, man, why do you have to like speak through your word? Why can't you just be audible? Or why can't this be like a movie?
Yeah.
I'm such a visual learner.
Yeah.
And I think I have learned visually for sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, personally speaking about my faith, I think like it really came from like personal trial, tribulation.
Yeah.
Alongside of this, like really the like written word, and like that like steadfast, full counsel of God, Genesis to Revelation, reading it all, interpreting it all, and like really spending time in different places of my life where I'm like, wow, okay, Lord, you're speaking through your word, like directly to me about this subject, you know?
Sure, absolutely.
And that's the sweetest thing.
I feel the same way, you know, especially nowadays, social media, everything's like 30-second clips, 60-second short attention spans, you know, being a visual learner as well. And there's so much packed into the Bible anyway, in every sentence and word in the parables. It's like you almost have to read it slow to kind of like absorb and get everything. If you go through it too fast, it's like, oh my gosh, there's way too much there, right? You could spend an entire sermon on a passage. And Matt Katsolas, I don't know if you know him, he, loves the Lord and family. He's from Flagler, lives in Jacksonville now, directed that Switchfoot documentary, Fading West. And my wife and our kids were staying with him in Jacksonville, and he was like, you got to watch The Chosen, you know, and so we tried to watch it once, a little slow, we watched it again, and we really got into it. And for me, that really was like that visual learning experience, right? It really brought I knew all the stories, but to see that come to life, I was like, wow, it kind of showed me the Bible in a whole new light. But I totally relate to that. You know, how can people you know, follow you? We talked about so many things tonight, even before the podcast tonight, at dinner, breaking bread over some barbecue. We talked about, you know, professional longboarding, how it's, you know, for the surf industry, it's almost been like this redheaded stepchild, like you're like the second. all the attention's on the glamorous, you know, sexy, high performance shortboarding, WSL, CT stuff, and then professional longboarders have always kind of been pushed in the corner. You know, you've had so many different kind of challenges, and now you're doing art. You're obviously raising your family. You're shaping yourself now. You've obviously got a lot of personal stuff with your dad passing recently, but you know, you're still in this neighborhood that you grew up just a few blocks away. You know, you got a beautiful wife, you got a beautiful son. You know, he's had some health issues that we need to be praying for. But how do people follow you in your career, and what could we be praying for?
Yeah, I think specifically, you know, just I think like the newness of a child in your home. It's like it's so exciting to have this like new chapter in my life, and I think just praying that the Lord would continue to like mature my heart. And I want to, you know, I think I really do feel the nearest to the Lord I've ever felt in my life, and I think that's like the thing I strive for now. Like my goal is always to grow closer and warmer and know more and really, like, I think more intimate is like kind of the phase of life I'm in the sense of just trusting in Him. I think, you know, you can follow me on Instagram at JJ Wessles _. You know, I think, you know, I think for you know, kind of those kinds of things too. I work with a few brands, but you know, I think Japan and the culture there and like the support I have there's a lot of YouTube videos and stuff.
You've gone there a lot for work.
BJ, I've gone there a lot. So, I don't know, I kind of think of like the different brands I've been involved with. And there's definitely ways to kind of like go through my my Instagram and kind of connect to some of those brands and kind of see where that goes. But really, I think like a very more direct way to communicate with me is just like direct message, or just even just, I don't know, following like kind of more through that lens of like a more personal, you know, just walking into each other, seeing each other, saying hi, that kind of thing still has a lot more value to me than like.
You like that personal interaction.
Yeah. I really do enjoy just like the community and having like fellowship. And I strive for that. I think more now, especially having a child, like it's great having a young one, because when you go to the park, like your son just breaks down those barriers, or daughter, right? It's just like, hey, there's a kid, this guy's a friend, oh, we're buddies, and you're like, never even seen you, and then you end up talking to the parents, and that's been really kind of hard for me, but also really cool, like to just step outside of, you know, like my normal kind of routines and surfing and seeing people I see all the time, and being stretched. And I think that's part of the future for us is just like getting out there more and going to other places like Florida, or different places that Lord may call us.
Love to have you.
Love to get out there. But yeah, so you know, that's
super cool.
Kind of.
So when you be praying for your son's health, your wife's health, and even yours, just with after the plane crash, you know, there was some, you know, some permanent damage done to your body, but thankful that you guys are both alive. You guys are able to, you know, have a child. So if you're watching this podcast and you're in South Orange County, anywhere, would you say between Salt Creek and Santa, we could try to find you, give you a big hug. We'd love to, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your testimony. Thank you for being a light here at the beaches. We were just praying about all these friends earlier, and just like God has just surrounded a lot of these surf industry guys, professional other, you know, surfers and athletes as well, with people that know and love the Lord, yourself included. So JJ Wessles, thank you so much for making time for us on the Christian Surfers podcast. God bless you, brother. We love you so much.
Thanks,
and looking forward to hang out some more.
Yeah, we got to get together more. This is just the beginning.
All right, God bless you guys. Cheers.